Network Entertainment.
My research tried to uncover the different determinants or the different reasons why yung mga stunted children and stunted families from many years back continue to be stunted up to this day, even when they have been receiving aid na from different agencies.
Welcome to Behind the Science podcast. New episode every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Magandang araw mga kapwa-siyentista at welcome sa isa na namang episode ng Behind the Science podcast. Ako si Paul Flores, ang inyong host, and our guest is a physician, global health leader, and system strategist with over 7 years of experience strengthening primary healthcare systems across Asia, Africa, and the United States. She currently serves as research scientist and manager in primary healthcare at Ariadne Labs, a joint center of Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Brigham and Women's Hospital, and as a universal healthcare expert for the Asian Development Bank. She obtained her BS in Health Sciences from Ateneo de Manila University, Doctor of Medicine and Master of Business Administration from Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health, and MS in Global Health Delivery from Harvard Medical School. So without further ado, let's all welcome Dr. Janine Patricia Robredo.
Hi Paul, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be on the podcast.
Ayun, so welcome sa podcast, Dr. Tricia. So ang topic natin ngayon, no, ito yung naging MS thesis or master's thesis ni Dr. Tricia sa Harvard. At tungkol ito sa stunting or malnutrition ng mga bata under 5 sa Negros.
Yes.
But episode recommendations lang na kasi dito sa podcast. May ilang med-related episodes na rin, although karamihan mga geology-related episodes. So please check episode 74 with Dr. Juan Silvestre Pascual. Ang pinag-usapan namin doon ay kung may epekto ba ang init ng panahon sa brain aneurysm. At please also check episode 71 with Dr. Clarissa Vilayo. Ang pinag-usapan naman namin ay kung pwede ba mag-exercise habang ikaw ay buntis. So, yun lang yung intro natin, and the usual, bago natin alamin yung naging research ni Dr. Tricia, kilalanin muna natin siya as well as yung naging journey niya as a scientist. So, Dr. Tricia, as mentioned earlier, kayo po ngayon ay nasa US, sa Ariadne Labs. So, can you share din po sa audience natin na hindi familiar, ano po yung Ariadne Labs and ano currently yung trabaho na ginagawa niyo dito?
Thanks, Paul. So, yung Ariadne Labs, actually, iba-iba yung pag-pronounce ng mga tao. Pati ako, hindi ko alam kung anong tamang pronunciation. Pero essentially, yung Ariadne Labs, it's not your typical na wet lab. Minsan nga nahihiya akong ikwento sa mga tao, sabihin, I work for a lab. Kasi ibang-iba siya sa ginagawa ng karamihan ng mga kaibigan kong PhDs basically here, or postdocs, nasa lab talaga nag-work. Pero kami, mas trabaho namin sa health systems. So, more formally, yung Ariadne Labs Joint System for Health Innovation siya. We sit at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and the Harvard School of Public Health. Short of saying, naghahanap kami ng solusyon o tinutulungan namin yung mga communities makahanap ng solusyon sa mga problemang ina-identify din nila. Whether it be process improvement, whether it be, alam mo yun, parang mga interventions that we could scale na nag-work na locally para paano natin siya papalakihin. We also work around measurement and evaluation, ano yung kailangan mong malaman at i-measure for impact. So, health systems, very broad thing. Kaya yung services namin very broad din. It can span from research all the way to program design, all the way to innovation. So, ayun. Hindi ko alam kung klaro enough siya, pero parang ganun yung ginagawa namin sa lab. Multidisciplinary team kami. So ako, kahit physician ako for instance, mga katrabaho ko, mga design specialist or sometimes meron ako mga quantitative researchers, qualitative researchers, implementation scientists. So across the board talaga. Kasi may recognition kami na yung health or yung public health, it's not just about the clinical but all the other things. So maganda to be around non-scientists as well. Kasi ang dami nating hindi din alam and they have more creative ways probably on solving things. So, yun yung setup ng lab namin. Right now, I serve as a research scientist. Very grateful na I get the chance to learn from my colleagues as a research support, but at the same time, lead my own projects din. So, I also serve as a PI ngayon sa may ano tayo, may rights tayo to be a PI for non-human subjects research. So, yun, na-exercise ko both, being able to provide research support sa bigger projects, but also being able to pursue my own interests and have the whole bench supporting me as well.
Pwede bang i-share yung project na PI ka or confidential yon?
Ay, hindi naman. No, not confidential at all. I think, yun, my first project as PI sa Naga City, so sa amin. I'm helping out Naga City basically sa data governance system nila as it relates to health. So I've been working with midwives and barangay health workers back home. Alam natin yung bulk of data collection, all it rests sa kanila. So yung first phase namin was process improvement, like how do you make it easier for them? But then the second phase is how do you collect and use data that would be useful to improve yung responsiveness ng city sa local health problems. So, yun, very excited. It's very special to me also na yung first project ko is somewhere very close to my heart. So, ayun, very excited. We just launched it in April. So, yeah. Mhm.
And then, so yung research pala na ginagawa niyo sa Ariadne Labs, hindi lang siya focused sa US. Pwede kayong gumawa ng research all around the world.
Yes, and that's something I appreciate din, no? Marami kaming domestic work. And it's so strange na yung domestic ngayon para sa akin is the US kasi nandito yung office. But at least for me, example, I handle majorly 3 projects. One of them, yung isa kong pinakamalaki actually sa Africa. That's more of AI integration and PHC. Hindi ako PI doon, but I serve as research support there. And I lead a specific stream of work. The next bigger project I have is yung Naga, where I'm serving as PI. And then yung pinakamaliit ka actually sa portfolio is domestic or US. So, most of my work still rests in the global space. And yeah, masaya ako na I get the different perspectives and na-expose ako to different systems.
Ay, guys, by the way, yung term na PI, Principal Investigator, yung meaning na baka,
Thank you for
baka
clarifying.
iba yung,
Not a lot of people
baka iba yung
know, but,
isipin nyo. Kanina pala nabanggit mo na, iba-iba yung pronunciation ng Ariadne Labs. Ano pa yung iba-ibang pronunciation nito? Curious lang.
Meron kang Ariadne, meron kang Ariadne. Alam mo yun? So it's like, walang right or wrong. I'd like to believe we would have to ask the founders kung ano ba talaga yung intention when they set that out. Pero, even ako, it's interchangeable sa akin. Sometimes I call it Ariadne, sometimes I call it Ariadne. I think it depends on who I'm talking to, pero yeah.
So siguro ngayon gusto ko naman i-backtrack yung journey mo bago ka pumunta dyan sa US. So sa halos karamihan or halos sa lahat ng mga interviews mo before, lagi mong nababanggit na hindi mo talaga pinangarap na maging doctor or scientist. So I'm curious ako nung pinurso mo na yung path ng pagiging doctor nung pumasok ka na sa med school. Can you share din like ano yung mga malaking challenges for you at that time? Kasi syempre iba yung college, iba yung med school. So can you share yung mga moments na yun?
I think, no, it's so funny. I always say na hindi ko talaga pinangarap maging doktor, but my mom always jokes na you actually kind of manifested it. I remember, I think I was in grade 2 or grade 3, and the document niya to, parang nagkaroon kami ng math quiz. As in like your normal math quiz. And I think I got like a 3 out of 10. Tapos sobrang takot na takot ako sa magulang ko na parang how do I explain to you na I got a 3 out of 10 sa quiz? And then I wrote them a letter saying and explaining ano nangyari. Kasi hindi ko kaya sabihin sa kanila in person kasi sobrang takot ko nun sa parents ko. Very typical Asian parents, yung mga magulang ko, expecting you to get like 10 out of 10. If you get, for instance, a 9 out of 10, tatanungin nila, ano yung mali mo, instead of say, good job. So 3 out of 10 for me was very daunting. So nagsulat ako sa ng letter apologizing for the 3 out of 10. And then the last sentence there was like,
Letter?
it was
Grade
something
grade
around
3?
3 out. And I think it was something around, really sorry ma and pa, babawi ako sa science. And then I remember like when I pursued basically medicine and the path to being a scientist, my mom tried to resurface that letter. And then she was like, you always say na hindi mo to pinangarap, but actually you manifested it when you were very young. So na lang, just I think a fun kwento. But yun, parang I think I forgot about that moment. I think nung lumalaki ako, I was exposed to what my parents were doing. So my mom was a lawyer, my dad was a public servant. I always felt that was something I wanted to pursue. Hindi ko pa dati nakikita masyado na, yung public service then basically yung pagiging doktor. It's exactly service. Pero syempre, I was exposed to that world, so I wasn't so familiar in a sense of the career of medicine. Like, I see doctors, but I just didn't see myself being one. Pero this is something that I always say din. Si mama, very transparent na she wanted a doctor in the family. And I was the closest person to having an inkling of interest in science. So, ako yung medyo napilit niya towards that route. I graduated high school when I was 14, 15. So, I didn't know anything. So, parang ako, mama, anong pipiliin kong major? So, ayun na yung parang window of opportunity niya. Pupunta ka sa pre-med course. And then I graduated college, I was like 19. And then it was just a natural progression to go to medicine after. Pero yun nga, because I was already starting to form my own thoughts, my own interests by the time I had graduated undergrad, pumasok ako ng medicine na hindi buo yung loob ko. So parang ang dami ko pa nung reklamo na parang I don't even wanna be doing this. Yung mindset ko na parang napipilitan lang talaga na bata. And I think when I entered medicine or when I pursued medicine, that was around the same time I was pursuing sports journalism. So sobrang layo, no? So I was doing, for those who probably are unfamiliar, I was pursuing UAAP reporting. So UAAP is like a collegiate league in the Philippines na naglalaban-laban in different universities sa sporting event. Hindi ako athlete, I was the reporter. So that's why I was into sports journalism. They were telling us at orientation sa med school na it would be difficult to balance so many things, especially on our first year. Kasi ibang-iba yung college sa medical school. It might be easier for some people. We don't doubt your intellect, your capacity. That's why we had accepted you in the first place. But the transition period of, college was a bit more, I don't want to say college was easier, pero parang mas may leeway ka versus medicine that's really structured, really rigorous. So we weren't advised to do other things. Pero dahil nga yung mindset ko na shocks na pilitan lang ako gawin to, I need to do something else to keep myself sane. So I was pursuing sports journalism in parallel. So I was very distracted. And this is, I think, where I answer your question. I think that was very challenging. Na I really wanted to insist my space. I didn't want to lose myself in the process of medicine because I knew it would be very demanding. It would be very taxing on me. So pinilit ko even though a lot of people warned me against it. Admittedly, I'm not the smartest in the room. Actually, sa amin magkakapatid, talino nung dalawang kapatid ako, parang if I want to score high on a test, I have to study twice as hard. Hindi lang kasi siya natural sa akin. So, I don't test well. Alam kong may lapses ako when it comes to intellect. Yung lagi namin biroan, binabawi ko sa social sciences, yung pagka-scientist ko. So parang alam yun, recognizing na I needed extra work. I needed to work harder just to keep up with my peers. But I still pursued sports journalism on the side. Very distracted ako nun. And parang I suffered the consequences, and I'm very open nga to saying and sharing na I failed a class in med school, which held me back a year. But that taught me a lot of lessons na parang sometimes you have to want something and you have to, or if you don't want to do it, there are things you just have to do. And I think that's where discipline kicks in. And yun, natutunan ko yun because of that failure. Parang I also had to choose na parang tutuloy ko pa ba yung sports journalism, mag-focus pa muna ako sa medicine. So that's also where I learned sacrifice. That's where I learned na you can have it all, but probably not at the same time. So ayun, I think I really built discipline during that period. So yes, med school was challenging on an academic perspective, but I think from a more life holistic perspective, that's what it taught me. That challenge of, trying to insist your individuality in such a rigorous structured system and knowing that there are things that you still have to do, not necessarily things that you want to do. But at the moment, this is what things demand from you. So gawin mo muna siya. And then maybe you could return to all your other interests later on. So that was a long answer, but basically that was the journey because you were asking about the journey. So yeah.
Pero ano yung moment na yun sa'yo na nag-decide ka na para ka sa field na to? Kasi nung bumagsak ka, hindi ka nag-decide na titigil ka, 'di ba, sa med school. Tinapos mo siya. So ano yung moment na yun na nag-decide ka na itutuloy mo to at para ka talaga dito sa field na to?
I mean, quite frankly, I think honestly it was pride at first and ego na parang, oh, shucks, hindi ako papayag na wala akong comeback story. And honestly, full disclosure, that was my first thought na ayoko tong gawin pero ayoko din tong hindi tapusin. Kasi like one, alam ng maraming tao na nag-medicine ako. Ano ba naman yung parang, I know this is toxic behavior pero parang isip ko dati, ano yung iisipin nila kung hindi ko ituloy. But of course, now that I'm older, I'm realizing that there's also courage and pride supposedly in saying that you pivoted and you pursued something else that you resonated with more. But at the time, that's how I felt. Na parang hindi kaya ng pride ko na hindi tapusin yung alam ng mga taong sinimulan ko na. Second part of that is, syempre nahiya ako sa mom ko. My mom was a single mom na already at the time. We lost my dad. My dad passed away when I was in undergrad. So I know the investment that my mom put just to put me to med school. And parang nahihiya ako at the time na ayokong parang nasayang. Kahit sasabi niya sa akin walang masasayang. Pero parang yun, parang nang hinayang ako. And I think three, kahit sinasabi ko na ang dami kong interests na gusto i-pursue, kapag uupo na tayo, tapos pag-uusapan natin, okay, what does that look like? How are you gonna operationalize what you want to do, your interests? Hindi ko rin ma-articulate eh. And parang ako, we don't come from such a well-off background. And parang, I recognize my privilege, pero alam ko din na yung fallback options ko hindi ganun kalaki. So I was being practical at the time na ano ba yung risk-reward benefit of still pursuing, risk-reward of the uncertainty of pursuing something else that might not be as stable at the time for me or something that hindi ko din kayang panindigan. So parang short of saying, yung decision ko not to quit even after I failed a class, no? I don't think it was as noble of a reason as some people might think. So yun, very practical reasons. Pride and practicality yung naisip ko at the time. But I think really where the moment kicked in na parang, oh shucks, this is for me, or I'm glad I continued. Hindi ko siya naramdaman until nag-clerkship na ako. So clerkship in med school kicks in on your 4th year. Nag-fail ako 1st year. So parang matagal-tagal pa siya bago ko naabot yun. But clerkship kasi, although you still have the academic exercises, you rotate na in hospitals. So you see patients, you learn the procedures. So doon parang mas nakikita mo yung point ng pinag-aralan mo before. Parang nakita mo na, okay, all of that was preparing me for this. And I really like talking to people. I like relating with people. Tapos doon ko na, parang sa ginagawa ko sa clerkship, pakiusap sa pasyente, hindi ko siya mapapagaling kasi student trainee pa lang naman ako. Pero makikita mo the power of like being able to just talk to people. And then seeing the difference that makes. And then also being exposed to the different realities of our healthcare system while you were in practice. Nabalik ko din doon, or doon ko actually nabalik yung interest ko sa pagsusulat and sa pag-journalism. So I wasn't writing about sports anymore. I was writing about the health system. And I think this is where my interest in research also kicked in. Kasi alam ko gusto ko magsulat. Alam ko madaldal ako. I think I'm a naturally curious person. So parang pag may nakikita ako sa hospital, magtatanong ako bakit ganyan. Kung may makita akong pasyente, gusto ko mas maintindihan paano sila nakarating sa state that they were in. So whatever I get from there, I would just write it. I would write it either for my own consumption. Sometimes when I feel like I want to share it with a larger group of folks, I would post what I write. So ayun, I think doon nag-click lahat. Yung mas naging on the job, hands-on na ako. And seeing na kahit medyo constrained ka within the environment of the hospital, of the clinic, you can be creative pa rin about pursuing your own things and doing that in service of your health system and of medicine. So, ayun, basically, doon nag-start sa clerkship. Doon nakikiusap na ako, yung nabalik na yung interest ko sa writing. It took a while, pero basta ito nakarating tayo doon. And I think doon lahat, for me, it all made sense there. Doon nag-click. And I'm very grateful, I'm very happy na I was patient enough to see through it. Kasi first year to fourth year, medyo malayo siyang journey at medyo mahaba siyang journey. Pero tiniis natin at doon natin nahanap din yung gusto nating gawin eventually.
Paano naman nag-open up yung opportunity sa'yo na mag-pursue ng master's sa Harvard? Hindi ka ba napagod mag-aral?
I don't know. Masarap mag-aral, honestly. Pero I think yung nangyari nun, so I took the boards, I took the physician licensure exam in 2020, so that was COVID. I was supposed to go to residency, so yun doon ka nag-specialize essentially. Doon ka pumipili, gusto mong maging internal medicine doctor, gusto mong bang maging OBGYN. Pero dahil nga yung interest ko mas health systems, pagkatapos kong graduate or mag-take ng physician licensure exam, inikot ko muna lahat ng sectors of the health system. So I remember I interned for a private health company. I continued doing clinical work. So I was still an ER physician sa isang hospital sa atin, sa Manila. Tapos I helped my mom sa Bayanihan i-consulta when she was still in the office of the vice president. So lilibot ko, meron pa rin akong clinical, pero meron din akong public and private sector. And that brought me so much joy. Not that the hospital didn't give me joy, but I felt like I could do so much outside the walls of the hospital. I think what I felt at the time, in hospitals, you receive sick patients, diba? But what could we do outside? How could the systems be better for the patient not to even reach that state? Maayos ba yung social services na nakuha niya, maayos ba yung support na nakuha niya. So that was my interest. On a whim, an opportunity to develop that skill more of, just, I took an MS basically, so Master of Science in Global Health sa Harvard. So when I saw that program existed, that it was more about, it was research, but it was in service of how do you make care better. I think that hit all the check boxes. I didn't even know I had a list in mind kung anong gusto ko talagang i-pursue or where I would go after that. So that opportunity came up. Luckily, we got accepted to the program. I was supposed to go into residency right after the presidential elections, but at the same time, or during that period, the opportunity to pursue my master's at Harvard also came about. And I felt like that was something that was too big to pass up, and it spoke nga to my interest. So that's why we ended up here.
Ay, curious pala ako kasi sabi mo kanina na nag-work ka din before sa ER. Pwede mo bang i-share yung most extreme case na nakita mo, or bawal yun i-publicize?
Pwede naman, I guess, in like a broader sense. It was COVID. So nag-intubate kami ng patients with yung O2 sat na sobrang baba na talaga na parang paano mo to, paano namin ikaw i-revive basically na ganito nakasama yung vital signs mo. And dun mo din makikita, ako dun ko mas nakita din na I was happy I was able to provide clinical care and nahasa ako dun eh. Kasi parang at the time walang mga doktor. So, sabay-sabay pumapasok yung mga pasyente na sabay-sabay lang sila nade-desat. Desat, ibig sabihin ang baba ng oxygen saturation nila. So, hindi ka na pwedeng parang, oh, senior, tulungan mo ako dito. Parang you have to make the calls yourself. Kasi yung senior mo, attending to someone more critical. So, imagine someone fresh from the boards na may konting experience moonlighting before na masabak sa ganun. Mahahasa ka talaga. And you're so grateful for the patients and their families for trusting you with that care. Pero doon ko din nakita, no, doon din mas lumawak at lumalim yung interest ko to work in systems. Kasi we, alam mo yun, we received patients. Kasi itong mga patients na to, for instance, walang pambayad. I worked in a private institution. Tapos parang tatanungin mo ano yung insurance mo, may PhilHealth ka ba, etc. Wala, lipat kang hospital. Parang maraming mga ganong instances that probably aren't said. Probably people are afraid to talk about it. Pero I witnessed it myself and I felt so helpless na bakit hindi pa natin a-attendan tong patient na to na very critical na nga siya. By law, bawal yun eh. Pero dahil ganon nag-work sa maraming hospitals na kung walang pambahid yung pasyente, instead na parang sasabi na you're saving the patient then of the financial burden much later on. So, papalipat mo siya sa ibang hospital. Alam mo yun, parang nakasuka at nakakonsensya din sa'yo na sobrang sama ng state niya, ba't di pa natin siya tulungan? So, minsan may kakulungan ka sa resources or minsan tatanggapin mo nga, pero bawat galaw mo papatak sa bill ng patient. Pag-hook sa kanya sa oxygen, patak. Pagkuha ng ganitong equipment, patak. So, parang doon, parang I had extreme clinical cases, but I also had very extreme cases na obviously a product of a system that wasn't working. So, ayun, I think doon talaga din lumalim yung desire ko to do something around that space. If I could do both, that would be great. And something that I still hope. Ako personally, I hope to get back into clinical practice. Pero again, mahirap siya i-balance. It's a difficult balance. We try what you can, pero ayun, I do believe na yung moments na or yung experiences ko along the way also strengthens my resolve into what I'm pursuing now. So there. Long answer again, but that was how it was at the ER and how that inspired me to continue the work that I'm doing now.
Ayun, so I guess madami na kaming napagkwentuhan dun sa naging journey ni Dr. Risha as a scientist, no? Ngayon, pag-usapan naman natin yung naging master's thesis niya dun sa
Yes.
Harvard. So, ang title nito, kinuha ko lang to sa website ng Harvard, Confronting Pervasive Under 5 Stunting, Insights from Nutrition Aid Recipient Communities.
Yes.
Tama ba? Yun yung title or sinimplify to dun sa website?
No, tama ang title. Nakakatawa kasi parang that went through so many revisions and during my graduation, they presented the wrong title. So I'm happy they got it right sa website. But yes, that was my thesis and I'm actually very grateful na I'm grateful for your invitation basically kasi I think that was shelved. Pero nakita natin just very recently, I think a couple of days ago, tumataas ulit yung stunting sa atin, sa Pilipinas. So, I think it's very timely to talk about it then.
Ayun. So, first question palagi sa segment na to. Can you explain your paper in one sentence tungkol saan ba ito?
So, I think the title basically captures it quite well. My research tried to uncover the different determinants or the different reasons why yung mga stunted children and stunted families from many years back continue to be stunted up to this day, even when they have been receiving aid na from different agencies. So, I hope that was succinct enough. But yeah.
Siguro breakdown natin yung mga terminologies. Like una
Okay.
siguro ano yung stunting? Ano yung medical definition niya at bakit siya considered na serious na problem sa Pilipinas?
So yung malnutrition, two things siya. You have wasting and then you have stunting. Yung wasting, mas timbang yung tinitingnan. So tama ba yung bigat mo sa edad mo? Yung stunting, mas height. So tangkad. So yung wasting, and I'm very much simplifying this, so apologies to all the doctor listeners here who probably have more medical definitions that they prefer, but in the service of making it a bit more digestible, yung bigat kasi mas acute siya. Ibig sabihin mas near term yung nakikita mo or mas short term. Kasi pag tinitingnan mo yung bigat, for instance, kumain ka lang ng sobrang dami for a week, bibigat ka ulit, 'di ba? Pero yung stunting, tinitingnan mo height, hindi mo yun nadadaya just by, trying to catch up on food or trying to catch up on feeding nutrition in a span of X months. Stunting for me, it really reveals yung mas generational issues na parang yung nanay mo ba pandak din or mababa, kulang sa tangkad basically. Or yung nanay mo ba habang pinagbubuntis ka, was parang yung environment niya ba optimal enough to rear you into the world na very healthy ka to the point na you were nutritious enough to be tama sa age mo. So, how you want to put it, yung wasting is more acute, yung stunting is more chronic. And dahil nga yung interest ko mas systems, not to say na yung wasting hindi siya systems problem, pero yung stunting, perfect picture siya of all your systemic and your social determinants of health din. Meron kang kung pangit yung sanitation mo, maka-affect din sa health mo. Kung pangit yung social services mo, maka-affect din siya somehow. So yun basically yung biggest difference between the two. Both of them still malnutrition, pero they hit different time points, kumbaga, and then they reveal different things.
Diyan pala curious ako kasi sa definition na binigay mo, parang may normal na height dapat, 'di ba? Paano ini-establish yung baseline na yun na normal? Kasi may mga Pilipino naman talaga na naturally hindi sila ganun katangkad. Kasi yung mga Pilipino na sobrang tangkad. So paano mo i-establish yung baseline na yun na ito yung normal?
May calculator siya eh. So I can't crunch the numbers off the top of my head. Pero yun nga, parang I think a lot of people have also seen kung ano yung na may flaws din basically on how we measure it. Pero meron siyang very specific scientific way of calculating and accounting for the different factors also. Knowing nga na may mga Pilipina essentially or other folks of Asian descent na may epigenetics part dyan, may, alam mo yun, so many factors come into play. Pero it's been well studied and I think meron talagang scientific way of establishing that baseline for specific groups.
Tapos bakit ka may focus sa yung 5 years old, hindi yung slightly older like 7 or 8? Bakit sa 5-year-old ka nag-focus?
Yun yung catch-up period mo kasi. So parang, for instance, ang dami ngayong mga school-aged feeding, di ba? So yun, mga school-aged children yung pinapakain nila. Pero for me, yung very formative talaga ay nasa first 1,000 days eh. Kasi yun yung parang titingnan mo from the time na nasa sinapupunan siya ng mother, basically, into, yung first couple of days or first year niya as a child in the environment. Para marami ka pang pwedeng mabago or at least pwedeng ma-influence na factor during that stage. So very critical moment yun basically for intervention. So kaya yun yung focus natin, yung mas bata.
Paano ka napunta sa ganitong study na nag-Harvard ka tapos ito yung napili mong na thesis topic?
That's a very interesting question. I'm trying to look back and wonder paano ako napunta sa nutrition. But I think initially at the time when I went to Harvard and yung first exercise mo on day 1 because it was a research course, no, or a research major. Tatanong ka na agad, what's your research question? Or parang, what do you want to find out? Because I worked so much in systems, I really wanted to understand the politics of health. So I listed down all my questions, yung gusto ko talaga malaman, ma-discover. Pero binabalik sa akin lagi ng advisor kasi sabi, this is too broad. You have to be specific. Like, wala kang mararating kung ito parang very complicated, very abstract. Kung hindi mo nasagot yung question mo or hindi mo nga ma-articulate kung anong gusto mong malaman, then that question is broad. Like, go very specific. So I was trying to think of a condition that's more tangible, one, that's two, very important in the Philippines, and three, something that still speaks to how political health is and how systemic health really is and not just clinical. And I think dun ako na rating sa nutrition. Kasi again, dun ko nga nakita na stunting, for instance. Ang daming factors that go into stunting. It's not just the clinical part, but it's the whole health ecosystem or the social service ecosystem actually that affects not just the kid but the moms and the whole family. So that was very vague. But basically yun nga, parang my interest in looking at the social political determinants of health and how could that be communicated more to people, and speaks to, the real health needs back home. I think that's how I ended up in nutrition, if I remember correctly.
And then yung study area, paano mo ito pinili? Kasi hindi naman siya buong Pilipinas, di ba? May certain
Hindi.
province ka lang na pinili.
I chose Negros. I chose Negros kasi, one, if people remember, yung martial law era, andun yung famine, the infamous Negros famine. Doon talaga siya. Basically, doon yun. Yung mga sugar planters and sugar farmers natin, yung families nila, very malnourished during the martial law era. And till now, if you look at the census or if you look at the numbers, yung area na yun yung isa pa rin sa areas na may pinakamataas na malnutrition in the country. So again, because of my interests in seeing, historical, political, social determinants of health, I'm like, bakit ganito? Ba't hindi siya nag-improve? Over the years, binabadan ng maraming aid yung Negros because of that famine. So very, very known worldwide, locally, even sa regional, na nagkaroon ng Negros famine. So during that time, nagpadala ng maraming pagkain. Yung Nutribon, di ba, at the time, dun, pinasok yun ang pinasok dun. So I think yung interest ko was why even with that aid, ganito pa rin yung numbers natin. So that's why I really focused on Negros. And we work with, or may naka-work ako doon na non-profit, doing really good things in nutrition as well. And it would be, I was very conscious at the time din, and I was a Harvard researcher. I'm very much an outsider in the perspective of the locals there. So being able to work through and with a local organization, nakilala na yung population nila, I thought would be a more effective way or a more effective approach to conduct my research. So, yun. I think different factors, para alam yun, everything just worked, na may kilala tayo working on that, dun din yung interest ko. So, we ended up there.
Ay, confirm ko lang kung tama yung pagkaintindi ko. Bali, di ba, nangyari yung Negros famine, tapos yung mga tao na naka-experience ng famine na yun, syempre, over time, tumanda, nagkapamilya, tapos gusto mo tingnan kung na-carry over kung yung stunting or nung parent na yun, na-carry over siya dun sa child. Ganun ba yun?
Maybe not directly because it was difficult to trace lineage at such a short period of time. I didn't have like the luxury of time to be able to conduct this research, but at least the area. Assuming, syempre we had a lot of assumptions. Like in research, you name all the assumptions as you go. Pero parang that area or that community, that farming community from way before, ganun pa rin ba yung conditions nila a few decades after. So wasn't able to trace family lineage. I think that would have been very interesting. Pero yung communities at least, yun yung sinubukan nating tingnan.
Ayun, nag-decide ka na dun sa study area. And then kanina, binanggit mo na yung stunting, it's more of height. So nung nandun ka na sa field, ano yung mga metrics na, or anong klaseng data yung kinokolekta mo dun?
Well, of course, kailangan natin mukha yung anthropometric measurements pa rin, di ba? Because that's the clinical basis of the research in question. Pero again, I was very interested in the social determinants of health. So for instance, we had quant data on surveys na household information. parang what is your income like or how much do you earn? Ano yung trabaho ng mama, ano pa ang trabaho ng papa, educational attainment, what's your house like? So all of these demographic surveys, because we really wanted to understand nga parang ano yung commonalities ng backgrounds itong kids na very stunted. May similar characteristics ba yung families? So yun, mas social, again, mention ko yung interest ko in social sciences. I think it focused a lot on that. So ayun, survey data siya for the quant. And meron din tayong qual data, of course. It was a mixed method study. So conducted focus group discussions with healthcare workers, your barangay nutrition scholars, your BHWs. And then we conducted in-depth interviews naman with households. So yung heads of households or yung mga mothers of the family.
Gano'ng kadaming households yung binisita mo para magawa yung study na to?
I think it was very controlled. Again, marami tayong tiningnan na household sa quant. So, nag-release tayo ng surveys. I can't remember the top of my head, pero mga 200 din ata. Yung na-survey natin ng mga magulang. So, that's 200 households. And then yung in-depth interviews, I think we had like 20. For the in-depth interviews with the heads of households or mothers. And then may focus group discussions tayo, several with the different stakeholders.
Curious ako, like, gaano siya katagal ginagawa? Kasi di ba, syempre, nag-aaral ka sa Harvard and then kailangan mo mag-fieldwork. Gaano katagal yung fieldwork na yun or gaano ka kadalas pumunta dun sa Negros to collect all this data?
So the program that I was in, it was a 2-year program. And it was designed in a way na parang fall term pa lang. Di ba nga sabi ko first day pa lang we were starting to formulate a research question na. By December, we had that lockdown. Tapos parang dapat yung mga kausap namin on the ground, we've engaged na. And, alam naman natin na maraming IRBs, maraming etc. So, kailangan a couple of months after you started the program pa lang, you are already taking care of all those things. Kasi the idea was sa spring, you started conducting your preliminary work na remotely. And then yung summer nun, summer being May to mga August, September, that's reserved for fieldwork. So yun, yung fieldwork ko ran through May to August, I would like to say. But the months leading up to that, laging remote work na ako. Tapos pagdating dun, nung May to August, kolekta na lang ng data talaga.
Ayun, so I guess madami na tayong napagkwentuhan dun sa background ng study as well as yung methodology. Ngayon naman, can you share yung results nung naging study mo?
Mahaba-habang usapan siya. Pero I think yung results lang talaga, it only proved or it only goes to show what we already knew from the beginning. No, na there's only so much clinical things you can do when it comes to solving for stunting. Ang kailangan mo talaga i-strengthen mo yung service delivery. So, di ba, yung question natin is, bakit yung may aid na, pero ganito pa rin yung resulta natin? So, nakita natin nun, aid needs to be, one, very targeted, and aid needs to be delivered where the families are. What do I mean by that? Ang daming aid na available, pero yung mga pamilya natin, kailangan pa maglakad ng lengths just to get that aid. Or nalaman din natin na may aid ka, pero yung aid na yun, it was only built for one person. Pero dahil napakahirap ng families natin with malnourished children, pinaghahati-hatian nila yung dapat sa isang tao lang. So hindi gumagaling yung bata. Kasi pinaghahatian for a family of 5, yung aid na dapat sa isang tao lang. So we basically had something to say or had recommendations about how aid should be given. Ano ba dapat yung aid? Yung aid hindi lang dapat lagi pakain, pero yung aid dapat meron bang maayos na trabaho yung families para continuous yung financial power nila. So, ayun, basically dun talaga nag-focus yung study ko, the different factors, again, that contribute to malnutrition in general. And then, kung ano yung mga recommendations natin to improve that or to take the next steps basically in addressing that. Yung nalaman natin talaga, dapat all the other sectors come in. Hindi lang puro pa-feeding tayo dapat. Dapat maayos yung system na nagsiserve nitong mga interventions. Dapat mas concerted siya. So, ang daming mga fragmented aid. May mga nagpapakain, may nagpapa-education, may naglalala. very fragmented again yung delivery nito instead of it being a whole package or a comprehensive package. Kaya wala din tayo nakikita masyadong results. So, yun, medyo mahaba siya, but essentially, what we really wanted to argue was hindi gaganda yung numbers natin sa malnutrition kung yung support system and yung structures for the child to thrive hindi din set up properly.
Possible ba yun ma-determine na, like, di ba, for example, ililista mo lahat ng factors na yun, tapos pwede ba yun ma-point out na ito yung pinakamalaking contributor dun sa stunting, dito tayo mag-focus?
I mean, you could probably say na merong more important than others. Pero the idea is to get stakeholders in the room, no? Na parang sino yung pwedeng mag-address nito, sino yung pwedeng mag-address nito. Kasi yung problem dyan, if you just pinpoint one without solving the other, parang yung iba enabling factor siya na hindi fully gagana yung intervention mo addressing one very specific thing if all the others hindi din okay. So for instance, nakita natin na halimbawa yung pinaka-problema niya is kulang na kulang talaga sa pagkain yung household na to. Kumakain sila once every 2 days. Tapos sabihin natin there's a donor that comes in and gives them food. Pero yung sanitation system or yung kubeta nila napakadumi. So binubulate at may worms pa din yung bata. So kahit sabihin natin binugbog mo siya ng pagkain, kung yung infestation mo sa tiyan ng bata, grabe pa din. Hindi mo napupuruga, hindi mo na attendan yung cleanliness ng surroundings niya. So wala ding nagawa yung pagpapakain mo. Kasi, gets ba? Parang, it's hard to just really focus sharply on one factor. Kasi all the other things na nagko-contribute to making a child healthy or unhealthy, hindi mo na-attend. So parang may cancel out effect siya. Which is sad, kasi it makes the problem more complicated. Pero ayun, the goal really is to be able to your point, list out everything. And then hopefully, since marami naman gustong tumulong, tingnan kung ano yung kaya mong ma-address, ano yung pwede natin i-delegate to local government, ano yung pwedeng gawin ng private institutions. So, ayun, it's a different beast, malnutrition, and kailangan talaga dito ng multisectoral approach.
Curious din pala ako kasi, diba, yung mga scientist researchers na mas focus sa lab work, syempre iba yung ganong type of work sa ganitong type of work na ginagawa mo na pumupunta ka sa mga communities and makita mo yung mga ganitong situation. So, paano mo hinahanda yung sarili mo, like emotionally, na makita yung ganitong sitwasyon ng mga iba-ibang pamilya na to?
That's a good question, and I don't think natanong pa siya sa akin before. Ako kasi I think growing up, I've been exposed to these realities. This has been my environment. I'm not claiming na alam ko yung pinagdadaanan nila completely. Kasi hindi. Pero the thing is, I think being able to grow up, seeing again how my parents worked, nababad talaga sa communities, parang medyo may idea ako of what to expect. And I think it's always, if anything, yung pinaka-preparation na ginagawa ko whenever I go to the field. One talaga is to come from a place of humility na hindi ko alam lahat. So, hindi ako papasok sa inyo claiming na alam ko yung problema ninyo, alam ko how to solve it. Humility na parang, ano yung, tatanungin mo sila, humility and curiosity, parang ano yung pinaka nakaka-bother sa inyo. In your view, ano yung pinaka makakatulong para ma-resolve tong mga issues na to. So I think that also gave space for me to learn from them as well and not being just the holder of, information. Many times na yung mga assumptions ko actually, I was proven wrong. And hindi ako makakarating sa ganung point of reflection, of enlightenment kung hindi ako pumasok with humility and curiosity. I think another preparation for me is I always have to condition myself na hindi ka savior. Hindi ka pumupunta dyan para bigyan ng solution yung buong community na ka-work mo. Nandyan ka talaga primarily para umintindi. And if anything, yung expectation from you is not agad to point out ano yung way paano to isolve, but to even get the story out there and helping people who aren't in the community become more aware of the realities. And hopefully yun yung mag-encourage sa kanila to also help out. I think has been my approach to a lot of things. Na hindi ako nandyan para masolve agad yung problema ninyo. Pero kung may magagawa ako para sa inyo, ano yung kwento na gusto niyo pang iparating sa iba or pwede kong ma-communicate sa iba? So it's not so much of, oh my God, it's gonna be sad. Because it is sad, but it's more of a better understanding and a better sort of clarity as to what my role is and who I am kapag nasa community na ako. So I think that's the most preparation I've done whenever I go to the field.
Ngayon, siguro, ngayon itatanong ko naman yung more on behind the scenes nung paggawa nung ganitong study. Kasi, syempre, any study na humans yung pinag-aaralan mo, I guess kailangan nyo ng mga permits and ma-approve ng ethics board or something. So, nung ginawa mo yung study na to, ano yung proseso na yun? Like, ano yung process nila sa Harvard as well as sa Philippine side naman na para i-allow ka gawin yung ganitong study?
Si Harvard very strict when it comes to ethics board. So I had to submit an IRB. And then local naman, medyo mahirap sa local kasi, di ba, you also have to submit to ethics review, IRB, etc. But then there are places na wala. So kailangan mo mag-send ng permits, obviously sa local government. Nagpapaalam na ito yung gagawin mo, ito yung purpose. So it was difficult. If anything, feeling ko administratively, pinakamahirap yung securing the permits. But it's your form of respect to the communities and your subjects also. So, ayun, it was a tedious process on the Harvard side. Pero yung pag-uwi natin yung local governments also, being able to explain to them the value of the work or the value that you think this work will bring was also very important. So I think yun yung mga dinaan nating regulatory steps to be able to conduct the experiment.
Nakakaisang oras na rin tayo, no? So, last question before we let you go, Dr. Risha. Ano yung mga ma-advise mo sa mga aspiring researchers?
Another broad question. I think sa akin, kasi nung nasa med school ako, nung nasa undergrad ako, hindi naman masyadong pinag-uusapan yung research. I'm happy now na parang there's more attention, parang institutions are able to generate more interest, more deliberately, putting research on the realm. Dati hindi ganun kalakas yung research background ko. So nahirapan ako to navigate my way through it. There are a lot of complications when it comes to research. Lalo na ngayon, I think for me as a PI, mahirap yung funding. A lot of people compete with like multiple organizations when it comes to getting their work funded. Pero kasi para sa akin, it's always helpful to be clear about the purpose of why you're doing research. And I think that kind of carries you through and that helps you communicate the value add a bit more. So in my case, for instance, and this might be controversial, especially if we're talking to a more scientific audience, my end goal isn't to publish. It would be great to be published. And I think at one point, that was my end goal. I think there was a stretch na gusto ko talaga dami kong publications. Gusto ko na pa-publish ako sa high-impact journals, etc. But at the end of the day, parang naisip ko, nakakarating ba to sa mga taong gusto kong makabasa ng ginagawa ko? And because I'm gearing more towards yung research ko, gusto ko makatulong eventually sa pag-isip ng solutions for communities. Naisip ko na baka journal publication isn't the way to go. Maybe it's more of briefs. The way you communicate your research has to be a bit more creative and has to speak to your audience. So nung may reframing akong ganun, nawala sa akin yung burden and yung pressure na I have to be academic. I have to be very rigorous when it comes to communicating my results. Don't get me wrong, I think there's a time and space for it. And I think there's a lot of value in getting your work published, of course. Pero for me, when I was very clear on my end goal, and that was to be able to use my research in the service of something else and research not just for research sake, medyo na-ease off yung pressure nun sa akin and I get to enjoy research more. And I get to be more energized to continue doing research. I think kapag publication lang talaga yung metric mo, nakaka-discourage sometimes kasi makakuha ka ng a lot of revisions, makakuha ka ng a lot of XYZ, parang ayusin mo to. Now, there are moments na nakuha ko yung research ko dun sa mga tinatry kong i-publish sa journals. Hindi na yun yung point nung whole ginawa ko. Point na siya ng like different reviewers coming in saying that I have to say these things. So parang nawala yung essence nung ginawa ko from the very beginning. Versus yung ginagawa kong research now, na I think resonates with me more and something I find valuable talaga. Research na naka-communicate sa mga taong gusto kong marating yung message o marinig yung message ko. Parang mas ganado ako to do research. So all that to say, I think it's not easy being a researcher, and I imagine it's not easy being a researcher back home. But if you're clear about, your end goals and why you're doing research, mahanapan mo siya at mahanapan ng paraan. And I think a lot of us, when we enter research, gusto natin ang laki agad ng na-accomplish natin. But my advice always is to be patient and to take it by chunks. It doesn't have to be grand from the very beginning. You start from something small, something very direct, and something very targeted. I don't think it's of less value because mas mababa yung end mo o mas mababa yung population mo. Para sa akin, mas tinitingnan ko yung impact eh. And sometimes the smaller things make more impact and more direct impact. So, I think yun. Being very clear about your intent and purpose will help you either avoid or learn how to navigate through the discouragement that a lot of us in the scientific field tend to experience because of research.
I hope nag-enjoy kayo sa conversation natin with Dr. Isha, and very rare lang to na may mag-guest tayo dito na high profile person dito sa podcast.
So, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Maraming salamat kay Dr. Isha sa pagpapaunlak ng aming imbitasyon, at maraming salamat sa lahat ng nakinig at nanood. See you everyone next week. Madami pa tayong pag-uusapan na research na ginagawa ng ating mga Pinoy scientists.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.